What a difference between today and the other day. When I uploaded a video, I think it was my last video, I was sitting here in a tank top. I was sweltering. Today it's cold. I can never guess how to plan out my wardrobe. The weather is just wacky. But the point of today's video is about the most vivid dream I've had yet. Typically, I really believe it's just regurgitated memories. It's your brain's way of consolidating thoughts and moving old thoughts out to make room for new thoughts and memories. I kind of believe that. I mean, I don't really spend much time on the interpretation part, but this is what happened, and it is so wild. I dreamt that there's a park here, and that is true. There is a park here, and I dreamt that right across the street, there was a huge house. That part is not true. Across the street from the park is a sidewalk. There is no house. But in my dream, there was a huge house. And the interesting thing about this house was it was made from like Jenga blocks, the game Jenga. So each block was stacked, like one was horizontal, one was like this, and all the way up on the structure. There was no wood, there was no sheetrock, there were no gutters, nothing like a standard house would have. There was no cement, it was just Jenga blocks. And it was a huge 2-story house, and it took up the entire corner across the street from the park. In my dream, I decided to go share that with my grandfather. And in my dream, him and my grandmother was still alive. So I walked up to their house, and my grandmother was sitting in the chair where she always sat. Ever since I knew her, she sat in the same chair. And she was there in my dream, in that chair. And she had a colorful outfit on, and that's the funny thing. My grandmother never wore very vibrant colors. She was more like a pastel person. Pinks, light blue, light green. But in this dream, she wore bold primary colors. She wore blue slacks, like a dark blue slack. And then she had on her top a red blouse. And it was just funny because she never dressed like that. But there she was. And in my dream this time, she never spoke to me. But my grandfather, he was standing in the middle of the kitchen. And what stood out to me was everything about this kitchen was the exact same as I remember when they were alive. The wood paneling in the kitchen, the little breakfast counter in the kitchen, the little wooden table and chairs that sat 4 people in the kitchen, everything was the same. Except their house was always very clean. Nothing was in the way or on the floor, the table was always picked up and all that. But in my dream, there was chaos and just a bunch of junk everywhere. So their breakfast nook had all kinds of bags and dirty dishes and china, glassware, and then the top of their stove had mail. That would never happen when they were alive. So that was weird that I dreamt that. And then right in the middle of the kitchen was like a pantry cart. It was like this metal 3-tier cart, and it was totally congested with like dishes and stuff. And these weren't things they owned in their real life. I don't remember any of this from growing up. This was clearly just in my dream. So I don't even know why I dreamt it. It was really strange. But my grandfather was standing there, and I even know what he was wearing. He had on a white t-shirt and a pair of Dockers and a belt. He also had a handkerchief in his hand, and he wiped sweat off his brow. Why is that significant? Because that is him. He was a farmer. He also had a professional career, but he was a family farm owner. So all growing up, I worked the farm too with him. And that is how he dressed to a T when he wasn't at his professional job. When he was home, it was all about the farm and the family. And that's how he dressed. And that's why it's so creepy. And I was like, whoa. So in my dream, I walked inside to talk to him about this Jenga house. I don't even play Jenga, so that's kind of funny too. But I talked to him about this Jenga house, and then I made a comment about the mess. And I was like, what's going on in here? Grandfather was standing there, and he started to tell me while my grandmother remained silent. She never spoke. And he said they were going through some stuff and cleaning out some stuff like that. This wasn't them in real life. They would have never had mail on the stove, garbage everywhere, junk scattered all through the kitchen. That just wasn't them. So I said to my grandfather, I want you to go look at this Jenga house. And I said to him, well, I'm amazed about the architecture. And he took me over there. And then on the other side, on the corner of the street across from the park. Facing the Jenga house was another house. And this house had an entirely cased-in glass front. There was a huge set of stairs. The house was only 1 story. But you walked up the stairs to this big, huge glass front. And that's totally in my dream. That doesn't exist anywhere that I know of. So that's totally made up in my imagination, I guess. But he showed me that house. That house faced the Jenga house. The side of it faced the park, where the Jenga house, the whole front of it faced the park. I didn't go in either one of the houses. I did notice, though, that the glass front house was sheetrocked and normal house stuff. Aside from the whole glass front, everything else looked normal. It wasn't made from Jenga blocks, but this other house was. And then he took me down into the neighborhood over there. And that neighborhood, by the way, is real around here, but in my dream, it was obviously different, but it was there. And we went over to that neighborhood and he showed me new construction houses. And it was a 3-part building. So there was a house, just like the first house, made from Jenga blocks. And then there were 2 outbuildings. I even got on my hands and knees and was looking under this other Jenga house to see how the Jenga blocks set on one another, to see why it was so solidly built. And I made a comment like, won't that fall down? Don't the blocks come loose? You know, without the other protections, you have everything that goes in a house building, you know, your sheetrock, your wood, your siding, your insulation. It didn't seem like any of that was in these Jenga homes. I never did get to go in any of these other buildings either. I wanted to go up and look at the roof. It was a flat style roof with no pitch. And my grandfather said it was just too high. He didn't want me going up there and hurting myself. So I never got to see what that was like. And I also never got to see inside. I would have loved to see what was going on there. And I said to him, well, what I envision is I will live out in the first Jenga house. And then we can take these other buildings here and build it into one big house. But then he showed me a completely different house. And I remember it like it was real. It was a 2-story farmhouse with a very, very pitched roof. And the roof was slate blue. It was beautiful. The house was pristine. It was white vinyl siding. And it had big front windows and a small porch. And he showed me that house. And he said, I would much prefer you in this house versus the Jenga house. But he didn't tell me why. And I don't really remember how I woke up. I just woke up from it. But I remembered everything I dreamt. I had a couple of theories. I thought, well, maybe because I have so many goals I'm working on this year, maybe it has something to do with my goal planning, or maybe my grandfather represents the authority figure I once had in my life when he was alive, and I really respected him and I looked up to him and he was very wise. Maybe that's all it is. He's standing as an authority figure over me like, hey, you're looking over here in this direction, but you really should be looking over here. You know, trying to guide my self-conscious into, you're doing this, but why are you doing that? Look at this. Instead of looking at the Jenga house that's just blocks, why not look at the complete house that's all nicely done? And I thought, yeah, because I think deeply. I don't know why I just do. I have to overthink everything. And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe, just maybe it's showing me, even though it didn't show me, like, think about a staircase, right? You look up a staircase, you look up in the stairs, there should be something there, like a structure, a house, or whatever is at the end of the staircase, right? And maybe that's what this dream was about. Like, it's not what you're looking at in the photo. It's not what you see. It's what you don't see, maybe. And then I thought, okay, well, what does that actually mean? And then I thought, well, since I'm looking at Jenga blocks, which could fall down very easily, they're not supported by anything, they're not cemented in, they're not sturdy, they're not stable. Maybe the dream was about try working with your goals on more stable ground. So then I went back to look at my goals. I'm like, well, what could that mean? I don't really have goals that are shaky or unstable. They're very easy to meet. So I thought, well, I don't think that's it. I thought maybe it was showing me, like, don't look at your progress, look at your result, look at your outcome. And I've always said this, and I've done videos on it in the past. My grandfather always said, keep your eye on the ball. Keep your eye on the ball and you'll never miss your mark. And I thought, well, maybe that's it. Maybe because he represents the authority figure of my life and I'm dreaming about an unstable house versus a solid house. And maybe he's saying, you're not keeping your eye on the ball. I'm like, that could be very well it. Now, I have had a challenging past 2 weeks. I started this new medicine, I think 2 weeks ago or about there. I have severe dry mouth. I've had trouble with heat intolerance. It's wicked on my body. It's a totally miserable experience. It takes all of me to get up every day and do anything. It makes my heart race. And I've talked about this in a video, but I still show up. I still show up to do my goals. But maybe that's what's going on in my subconscious, because I'm thinking about how the medicine is affecting me and is it affecting my goals? That could be too. So I made a bunch of notes in my planner. One of them said, look to the end result, like keep your eye on the ball. We covered that. And then Jenga blocks. Maybe that's something to do with successful building, maybe of your goals. And then the stairwell reference, like don't build stairs to nowhere type meaning. And then I wrote down, don't settle for a Jenga block house. Make sure you build a solid structure. And then I thought, well, maybe the Jenga blocks represented some kind of stepping stone to the goals. There was another thing that happened in the dream. You know how in mystical TV shows and things like Harry Potter, and they open the newspaper and it's like a continuous playing of the photo, like the photo comes to life. Well, in my dream, there was some kind of catalog, like a ladies' cologne catalog, and it was sitting on the stove with the other mail. And I picked it up and I flipped to this page and it was an ad. It was a full-size ad of a lady sitting there. And I don't know if she was advertising cologne or what she was advertising, but she said something to me that was so weird. Like she said she witnessed like this car accident right in the middle of this catalog I opened. She's talking about this car accident she witnessed. And I thought, that is so strange. I honestly don't know anybody who's been in a car accident recently. I don't think it has any hidden meaning. It was just very strange. So in my dream, I actually threw out the catalog because it creeped me out so much. And there was a woman in the catalog talking to me. So it creeped me out. Threw it away. But then I thought of something else. And I thought, well, maybe the dream is telling me not to let anything hinder me from my goals. Like I've been saying, the medicine, right? The medicine is horrible and it's causing all these problems in my life, in my day. And I'm not functioning the same way because I'm on this dumb medicine for the next, well, now it's the next month. It's supposed to be like a temporary, like a 6-week thing. So maybe that's why I'm dreaming this. Like, I feel like my life has been derailed by this medication. Like the woman talking about a car accident sort of thing. And then I thought, I don't know why this popped in my head because it has nothing to do with the dream other than my grandfather was a farmer in real life. And I thought, maybe what it's saying is weed out anything that's a hindrance. Maybe that's what it's talking about, like weed out any hindrances, like farmers weed a garden. And I thought, yeah, that makes sense. Maybe that's what the dream is saying. However, that's not possible right now being on this medication. I can't just stop taking it. So maybe I need to look for a workaround. Thanks for watching. Take care.